Hi, I'm Tom Lauwers, and I'm the Chief Roboticist and founder of BirdBrain Technologies, which is a company that is actually in the business of making more makers. And we do that by making and commercializing educational robots and electronics developed at Carnegie Mellon that empower kids to learn coding, engineering, design, electronics, and computer science. So I've come here to tell you that it's a great time to start a maker business in Pittsburgh. And this is actually true in Tulsa or San Francisco or anywhere else in some ways, but it's specifically true in Pittsburgh in other ways. So let me tell you first about the things that have generally made maker-style businesses easier to start lately. So businesses have always made things. The difference is that it no longer takes $1 million to bring a product to market. So in the last 5 to 10 years, it's now possible for a tiny startup to design and manufacture a product that reaches thousands or millions of people. And here's some of the reasons why. The design tools themselves, computer-aided design, that kind of software has gotten much easier to use. It's possible for people maybe who don't have an engineering or computer science background to learn the necessary skills to design a product through tutorials online or by connecting up with communities online and in person, communities of experts who have been there and who freely answer questions about any technical question. It's much easier to prototype a product. It's cheaper to create and manufacture mechanical things with 3D printing. It's also much cheaper to create like an electronic gadget, a circuit board or something like that. The rise, basically almost all companies now use contractors when they're manufacturing at scale. Even Apple, uses Foxconn, and they don't own their own manufacturing facilities. So the rise of these contractors means that anyone can go and find a manufacturer, either overseas or here, and say, I want you to make this specific thing with these specifications, and get advice back from them regarding whether it's manufacturable or not. It's the same thing is true with order fulfillment. So if you have a product and you need to ship it, instead of shipping them out of your basement, you can contract that to either a local warehouse or national companies like Amazon or Shipwire. At the same time, it's easier to fund a hardware product. Crowdsourcing platforms like Kickstarter, Indiegogo have made it possible for anyone to present an idea and a prototype and get funding for an inventory for that well in advance of actually shipping the product, which is a very problematic thing. I mean, even if you're making 1,000 of something, that may still cost $30,000. And so without that kind of crowdsourced funding, you may have to find funding from basically other locations, investors, and things like that. And I think actually what's most important here is that many consumers want to help you. Many consumers crave and thirst for customization of products. Not everybody wants the exact same gadget anymore. People want a wide range of different options, and that means that there's a much broader opportunity for people to create and make niche products. And this is true both with electronics and gadgets, but also with other types of crafts and making. Etsy is a good example of a marketplace where people sell the things that they make. So what makes Pittsburgh special? Well, there's a number of resources that I've relied on when starting my company, specifically a network of existing entrepreneurs who've been there. That's really important. I think when it comes to maker-style businesses, you have to think of it in terms of an ecosystem and whether all parts of that ecosystem exist in the city. And so one of the components of that ecosystem is this network. Another component is easy access to maker-style spaces. So Tech Shop and Hack Pittsburgh, being here in Pittsburgh, really helps in terms of allowing people to have access, relatively low-cost access to both hardware and also software, because sometimes the CAD packages that you use cost, a license may cost $5,000. It may be prohibitive. Other things that I've relied on, because my products came out of Carnegie Mellon, I relied on the Technology Transfer Office at Carnegie Mellon, and they really helped me get started in 2010 by connecting me with accountants, lawyers, and also providing a small startup sort of seed funding. And another thing that's very important is the cost of living in Pittsburgh is low, and that's really helpful when you're starting out on a shoestring budget and you have a family. So couple that with a great talent pool of engineers, computer scientists, designers, artists, I've never felt like I couldn't find the talent that I needed in order to get my products going forward. So what's exciting about this is that some of these things didn't even exist 4 years ago. And so I really see the ecosystem as building on itself. TechShop wasn't open. There's a hardware-focused accelerator, Alpha Lab Gear, in the city now, so that you can go and apply for seed funding in order to start a maker-oriented business. And there's, frankly, even compared to 4 years ago, there's a much bigger network of similarly minded maker entrepreneurs in the city who have experience. So somebody starting out now can access literally dozens of people who have done this before and who are willing to talk and happy to talk with them. So in conclusion, there are still a few things that could be improved. So one of the things that may be difficult is finding partners, especially on the business side. So people who are more business-oriented to help you start your company and focus not necessarily on the product and making the product, but on how to market it, how to sell it, how to approach the right channels, and whether you need investment or not. Basically to help you make those decisions. Low-cost access, again, to legal, to accounting, everything that's in kind of the nuts and bolts of just forming a company. Accessing space that's appropriate for a hardware startup kind of at the next stage. So TechShop, Hack Pittsburgh are great places to design your prototypes. But we need incubators that are maybe focused a little bit on hardware. So they may have shared resources that are hardware focused, like 3D printers, like software licenses. Hardware and things take space. So sometimes it's helpful to have like an initial inventory or a stock that you store on site. So you want a place that is cheap but large, which fortunately in Pittsburgh there are many places that are both cheap and large. So a place like this could be found. And then lastly, there's the problem of staying here. So how do we scale up? How do we scale up companies that are scaling, and how do we keep them in Pittsburgh? I think Pittsburgh is wonderful. It's doing a great job at generating companies. The problem, kind of the sort of a national problem, is that when you get to a stage where you're looking for venture capital, oftentimes the venture capitalists will say, okay, now you have to move within 30 minutes of where I live in order to reach your next series. So this is a systemic problem, and I don't know how to solve it, but there is a real question of how do we scale a company here? And maybe we need to rely on other ways of scaling a company besides venture capital that could still work. So yeah, but in conclusion, it is absolutely a wonderful time to start a business here in Pittsburgh around making and creating things.